Here we are in Italy. This is Ken Brant, and he's an artist.
So this is Plein Air video number 3, but it's actually my 4th plein air painting while we were in Italy. So we're back at the creek that kind of goes into town at Ponte Sieve, and all the other students had arrived. This is Monday morning. All the other students had arrived, and they are painting that first scene that I did with the bridge and the cathedral in the distance. So instead of painting that for a second time, we decided to face in a different direction on the creek and do these buildings, these houses that were here along the side. And as you can see, the sun is just coming up, and there's like a hill behind me, so the sun isn't completely over that hill, so there's still a shadow area on the lower part of the grass there, just on the other side of the creek, but the sun was hitting those houses pretty good. So I wanted to capture that, and it's the same setup that I used earlier. Still trying to get my plein air legs underneath me as the week moves on here. Like I said, this was Monday morning, so I still had a whole full week of plein air painting ahead of me. And this one here, as you can see, I got my phone and I'm putting it away now. So initially what I do is I take a picture of what I want to paint, and I move that around on the screen and frame it in and get the composition the way I think it's going to look best. And then I use that to frame in my painting, so I'll start the drawing and I'll look at the phone and I'll figure out where I want my edges to be, where I want the top of the painting to be and the bottom. And as you can see here, I made a decision to show a little piece of the sky on that on the top part of the painting there. I actually changed that near the end of the painting. I really didn't care for how it looked in the composition. Initially I thought it looked okay, but then I changed it. So that's pretty much what we're doing here. Now I'm using my setup is the small sienna box, and the colors that I have are titanium white, cad yellow light, yellow ochre. I had some cadmium red. I had some permanent yellow green, and my blues were cerulean blue and ultramarine blue. I had the asphaltum and ivory black. So those were my basic colors on my palette. So it's kind of limited, but I also had a whole bunch of my other paints with me in a backpack. So if there was any other colors that I wanted, any blues or greens or anything that I thought would enhance the painting, I had it with me to use at my discretion. But for most of the part, I really stuck with the colors that I had on my palette. So here I am putting in the mixture of the permanent yellow green and asphaltum, and for that to darken that green up, kind of gave it an olive drabby kind of color, very close to maybe a viridian green. That's why I used the permanent yellow green. With that color, you can really vary your greens from one end of the spectrum to the other. So that's a good color to have on your palette for greens. And I try to, the greens are not one of my favorite things to paint. I really do try to keep those to a minimum as much as possible, because you can really oversaturate your painting with greens, because there's so much greenery out there, especially if you're, this is in September and the weather was still in the 80s, so it's still pretty much summer there, and so you have no fall colors really to work with, so a lot of greens. So that's what I was using there. For the color of the roofs, it was the cadmium red mixed in with the asphaltum, and that gave it a terracotta type of color, which is kind of how those roofs, the color of those roofs. So I was kind of pleased with the way that came out for that color. And basically I jumped back and forth between my yellow ochre and the cad yellow light. I used a lot of asphaltum. I used my ivory black to darken the values as I needed, and basically that's those were the colors that I used. And so you can see not much of the blue, not much for the sky until the end, where I decided to change that up. So I was pretty pleased with the way this particular plein air painting came out, as far as the composition and the subject matter. And you have to remember that when you're doing a plein air painting, it is not, the idea is not to come away with a completed masterpiece at the end of the hour and a half or 2 hours that you're out there working. I would say an hour and a half to 2 hours is probably the longest that you should work on a plein air painting, because your light has changed so drastically. Remember, the light changes like every 7 minutes when you're outside. So whatever you are looking at initially, that light is long gone, within an hour and a half to 2 hours. So that's one of the other reasons why I take a photograph of the what I'm painting initially, so I can see that light, where it was early in the morning. And also, so if there's the way the light is hitting it first thing in the morning, and I like some of that, I can keep that in there. But as I'm looking at my subject matter in front of me, and the light is changing, if there's something that changes that I really like the effect of, then I will change my painting accordingly and put that new effect into the painting. I'm not going to stick with the colors that I saw initially. If it's something that I think is much better than what I saw at first, then I will change it. And so should you. That's the beautiful thing about doing the painting. You're trying to capture the essence of the subject matter that's in front of you. Whatever it was that drew you to that site in the first place, that is what you're trying to capture. So you're doing the best you can. You're putting in your colors, and remember, whenever you're doing a plein air painting, you're trying to capture the essence. You're trying to capture your values. You want to try to get your values as close as possible to what you're seeing in real life. You want to try to match up your colors as best you can. And you are trying to look at your painting as you're going along and see if your composition is something that's aesthetically pleasing to look at on your canvas. Again, if it's not, there are things that you can omit, off of your painting. If you painted something in, you don't want it, you can take that out. If there's something that's not in your painting that you think would be good, like for example, maybe you need something over to the left or the right of your painting, like a tree. You can look around and take the trees that are in front of you and put them into your painting as you see fit. And the beautiful thing about that is you have that tree right in front of you to look at while you're painting, so it's not like you're using your imagination to make a tree. You actually have the tree there to look at to paint. So, and how the light is hitting it, you can also use that lighting in your painting, even though it's not in front of whatever it is that you're moving that tree to. The lighting should be very similar, and you can make it look like it belongs in your painting. And those are things that I like to do when I'm out there doing the plein air painting. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But then again, you're going to bring this into your studio. Like I was saying initially, you are trying to capture the essence. You are not trying to create a finished masterpiece at the end of the time that you're out there. You're trying to capture the picture as closely as possible so that you can use your photo that you took initially or the plein air painting itself as a reference for another painting, a larger painting. Perhaps you want to do this in a larger scale. You would use this painting as a reference, and then you can look at it and say, okay, this color here looked really great. I like that color. I will utilize that in the new painting. Or if you are actually working over the top of your plein air painting to improve it in the studio, then you can say, okay, I want to mix my colors to match that as I have it here and apply more of that. So there's a lot you can really do with it to improve what you have, or to make your painting a better painting. And that is the other reason why I also have I already have one video up and for my series from plein air to studio. We already did the first plein air painting that I had done here in Italy, and so you won't see this one because this is painting number 4 that I did there, so you won't see this for another couple of videos yet. But when we get to it, I'm really excited to work on this one because I was really pleased, like I said, with how this one came out already, when I was working on a plein air. So there isn't going to be like an extraordinary amount of work that I'm going to be doing to this to improve it, although I will definitely be doing some work on it. So yeah, for the colors of the building, you can see in the picture on the left that building that I had in front of me is the way the sun was hitting it. It had a very yellowish hue to it. You can see that very closely resembles the color yellow ochre. So I definitely used a lot of yellow ochre in that building, but I needed the focal point to also be on that building. So on one edge of that building is a very light area that I put in there, and I showed a transition of light to dark on the front of that building. So you'll see on the one corner I have a focal point, and it transitions very nicely. I was very pleased with how that came out. And as I was working along, like I said, we only were on this for, like I said, an hour and a half to 2 hours, an hour 45 minutes maybe, and I did not get to complete the area in front. Like there's 2 trees, you can see them in the picture there, that I wanted to put in there, and I really didn't get a chance to capture those as well as I wanted to. So I'm going to be doing those in studio and painting those in, getting them more flushed out, and putting a lot of darks and highlights in there on those trees. So that's one thing I'll definitely be working on. There's a wall there. There's not a lot of detail on that wall, but again, I don't think there needs to be a lot of detail because it's kind of far away from where my focal point area is. And when you're doing a painting, you want your focal point is your area of interest. That's where the viewer's eye is going to. So that is where all of your detail and sharp edges are going to be concentrated in that area. And so anything away from that, the further away from the focal point, the more softer your edges become, the more the lines get blurred, and because that is how we see in real life. If you're looking directly at something, everything on the peripheral vision of your sight, it's soft and blurry, almost non-existent. And so that's kind of how I try to paint my details on my painting. Focal point area where you're looking at directly, sharp details, sharp edges, everything else, soft edges, blurred lines. I'll even try to run colors into each other, and of course, there's always the argument, well, once the person is done looking at the focal point, they continue looking at the rest of the painting, they're going to concentrate on other areas of the painting. What about how those look? Well, that's where you create the illusion that those objects, or whatever the subject matter is, appears to be what you want it to look like. It's going to look like a tree, it's going to look like a wall. Obviously, the further away you stand from your painting, the more you realize what it is that you're looking at. So these things come to light and you can see them clearer when you're standing 8 feet away. And as you step closer to your painting, then things become less clear. They just start looking like abstract brush strokes, and they don't make a lot of sense up close. And that is the illusion that one tries to create with painting. The only time that doesn't happen is when people do the hyper-realistic paintings, where they're doing making their painting look very much like the photograph. And I try to stay away from that. That's not something that I want to, that's not how I want to paint. That's not the style that I'm looking for. I'm looking more for a looser stroke, and creating that illusion of a picture from the distance. So here's where I am wiping out the mountainous background that I put in there, and you can see I'm putting in the more blue here, and I am making the skyline come across and off to the right on the painting. I thought that was a more aesthetically pleasing look, and I'm glad I made that decision. It doesn't look like that in real life, but it doesn't have to. That was where I'm using artistic license, and I'm making it work, because you can see in the photograph on the left that that hill dips down and then it dips back up, and on my painting I just have it kind of dipping down and continuing further down to the right, not by a lot, but just enough to create some interest over there. Now in the studio, what I'll do is I'll try to put in a better sky transition there, you know, utilizing my blues and my warms and my cools, and hopefully create some interest in the sky there, because I'm pretty sure while I was out there working on this, it's almost just one color of blue. I don't think I put much of a transition. From what I'm looking at here, it doesn't look like I did. So here I am putting in the shadow, the darker areas on those trees, and again, I really didn't get a chance to really flesh out those trees as nicely as I wanted to. I was trying to get those in and as quickly as I could, so I could work on other parts of the painting. So if there was anything else that I saw that I wanted to make sure I had in there, I wanted to get it in there as soon as possible, because like I said, we were there for an hour and a half, hour 45 minutes, and we all pretty much, what ends up happening is we just decide, okay, we've been here long enough, let's start packing up, and everybody packs up, and we leave that area and we move on to look for another spot. And but one thing that did happen, as you can see here, you can see how the sun is coming up behind me, and of course now it's higher up. It's come over the hill, so now the sun has totally saturated that whole area, but it's also created a shadow of me on my canvas, which that isn't the problem. The problem is where the sunlight is hitting the canvas. That is a problem. Because of that, I did have a tendency, and this happened more than once, I did have a tendency to create a much darker painting than I wanted to. Because it's so bright, the sun is hitting it, you're using darker colors. They don't look that dark while the sun is hitting your canvas. So it's always a good idea to have an umbrella or something that you can put up and keep that sun off of the front of your canvas. And I did not have an umbrella with me, something that I will be working on in the future. So these are, again, like I said, I was trying to get my plein air legs underneath me. They were wobbly at first, but as the week progressed, I believe I got better. My compositions got better, my drawings got better, and that's what happens when you work on something on a daily basis and you keep improving and keep improving. Practice makes perfect. I think it was said, I don't know who said it, but it said you don't become an expert in something until you've put in, until you put in 10,000 hours. Well, I don't know how many hours I have put into a painting or in the art of painting. I know I've been doing it for a long time. I don't believe I have 10,000 hours into it. All I know is I have a lot more work to go, and it is always a joy and experience to do that, to strive to do that every single time. So if there's anything about this particular video or any of the videos that you've seen that you like or don't like, make sure you put it in the comment section below. Make sure you hit the like button, and also, very important, make sure you subscribe to this channel. I am trying to build a big following, and the only way to do that is to get the likes and the comments and see what it is that people want to see, and I will strive to make sure that you get that kind of content. I don't have any problems whatsoever catering to whatever it is that you guys want to see. If there's enough people want to see something in particular, or a technique or a style, then we'll do that. I don't have an issue with that at all. We're all here to learn together and to get better, and so hopefully what I'm showing you here does that for you. So yeah, just make sure you let me know in the comments below. And until the next video, This is Ken Brant signing out.